Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to walk through part of our journey in the cloud. So we have one of our flagship products. I want to talk you through that. What is 360 Encompass? What the customer needs were when we needed to look at this. It's typically a hybrid deployment on premise. We'll talk a bit more about that. But why we migrated to AWS, what our methodology was to move that whole workload up into AWS, and then the challenges that we encountered along the way. So let's just dive right in. So what is 360 Encompass? It's basically our revenue cycle platform product, and it's, as I mentioned, it's always delivered in a hybrid environment previously. So there's a portion on-premise, we have a lot of our artificial intelligence in the cloud, and that combines to give the power that we generate for our customers that basically allows them to cover their revenue cycle needs. So from that, when we looked at our challenges that we had with this legacy deployment that we had on-premise, there was a couple things that our customers really asked us. We did extensive VOC, and it was always security was number one. It's our job zero is security. We got to make sure that all the data is protected. Performance then is really the next issue. So security and performance go hand in hand, right? So you can be over secure and you have to give up on some performance. You might want to tend too much towards performance and you got to give on security. So our goal is to be secure and give the performance. And so I'll share some of those results with you in just a minute. The next is efficiency. When you have a legacy product, you really want to be very efficient. When you look at the update processes, the validation processes, the troubleshooting processes, there's a lot of inefficiencies with an on-premise deployment. And so what we are trying to do is to really minimize that effort that's required by our customers in order to support the application that they have. So another big one, of course, is downtime. We all know that we want to be productive and use that. So downtime is a really big priority for us, and it was a demand of our customers as well. But then cost is also important. And so we had to look at that. We want to be open and transparent. We do a lot of work with our customers on total cost of ownership, and we work through that with them individually. And then the really big one that came up in a lot of our early conversations was flexibility. And so the ability to have a project that go fast, to maybe slow down, to put things on hold. You got different projects going on, EMR migrations that are going on, all those different projects going on, and how can you have a flexible approach to getting one of your products out into the cloud, or how can you deploy it even faster? So along these lines, what have we been able to do? All of the data that we have is secure. So we've actually made customers more secure in some cases because we're making sure the data is encrypted before it ever leaves the data center. Even though we use some secure VPN technologies, we still ensure all data is encrypted before it ever gets there. So our rule is, data is not encrypted, we're not going to bring it into our center. We're not going to expose anything that way or have any potential vulnerabilities. And so the performance, we've got some performance monitoring tools that we've developed. So we look at our application performance, and what we're seeing is actually, it's very interesting because when you add in a VPN, you think you're going to add a lot of overhead and performance or applications can be slower. But what we're actually seeing is because of the complexity of the product, we're actually, our performance of our customers we have in the cloud is actually equal to or better than the average customer that's on premise. A lot of that's because of the maintenance and the optimization of the application that we're taking that over. And so that extra work that we're doing takes that burden off of our customers and actually increases the application performance. So when you think of a coder and you think of their productivity needs, that's really where the action, that's where it is, right? Where the rubber hits the road is on that productivity. So they're going to be hands-on, they're going to be moving through, and that productivity is really critical for us. So we pay very close attention to that. We can actually go in with some of our monitoring tools, we can go in and see the experience of a single user, and so we've actually done that in some cases where we had a user look like they were having a little bit more of a challenged experience. We called them. They thought we were somebody reaching out trying to see some of their PHI data and not the vendor, but we were calling a direct user. And so once we got past that and they knew who we were, they really embraced that coming in, and they were like wondering why we were reaching out because they weren't complaining about any performance issues. And so as part of their workflow that they came in, and we could see some of that we could detect that performance within the system to that one user to be able to reach out and see what their experience is. So that's something that we really take a lot of pride in, is making sure that those users are having the optimal experience. It's the whole reason why we moved it to the cloud in the first place. When you look at efficiencies, where we've really seen the big move for us is getting that workload from on-premise. When you think of an on-premise deployment, a complex system with a lot of interfaces, you've got your server environment, you've got your VM environment, you've got all the storage, you've got your networking environments. And what we're able to do now is we standardize all that in our cloud. So it's all built for the customer. It's purpose built, but it's designed the same from one customer to another. So now, from our perspective, because we're monitoring every channel and we can dive in very quickly through our tools. We can diagnose where that issue is. We've actually been able to reduce the severity of one issue, any type of an outage type of an issue, by over 92% actually. And so that's meaningful, because when you look at an average downtime with maybe like 12 or even 18 hours, when you're on premise, because you got all the troubleshooting to do, you got your IT resources you got to get to, we don't have that now. With our application, we can get there. If there's something on the customer side of the connection, we want to be able to diagnose that whether or not it's in ours and where it most likely is in the customer side as well. Empower the customer with tools so that they can see where the performance might be degraded also. And so the idea is to really, typically in an on-premise environment, when you have a vendor involved, you're working both ends of that troubleshooting. You have the user trying to report the issue, then you report through the escalation process and get to the 3M team, and then you're working that, and then you've got to find the right resources in the middle. We're cutting out all that middle. We want to push the resolution closer to the user so that their experience is that maybe they have a short experience, but with our monitoring, we're trying to resolve those issues before they are an issue, before the user actually recognizes an issue. So if we see degradation of server performance or of the VPN performance, we're going to start acting on that right away, and that'll prevent the customers from, the end users, from actually having any degraded experience at all. So maintenance is another big piece. When you think of a legacy product, you're doing updates. We've got strong regulatory commitments to our customers that we're going to get regulatory content into their users' hands as quickly as possible. So that maintenance cycle can be very cumbersome. So we do frequent updates. Some of them can take a little bit of time on a legacy product with database schema changes. And so what we're doing with that is we've been able to minimize that, reducing it to about half of what a customer would normally take on premise. So we're looking at about our regular maintenance. We've cut it from what some customers will block out 4 hours. We've cut it down to about 2, and so or less for some of our updates. And then the other thing that we're really proud of is when you think of a legacy product, something that's on premise, those support tickets, right? There's a lot of calls coming in. There's informational calls. There's calls related to the networking or those issues. We've been able to eliminate over 80% of that call volume coming into our support center for those customers that have moved to the cloud. And so that's real meaningful. Again, less downtime, less interruption, faster resolution times, fewer issues altogether. And so that means that your users are hands-on, being more productive. So the other is downtime, 99.9%. That's about as good as we can get when you look at internet connectivity for a lot of these. Guarantees from internet service providers. So we offer 3 nines. It's in our contract with penalties, and we're hitting that. We're hitting 99.97 and above. In fact, this year we had one 13-minute blip early this year. It was the Comcast for a customer actually went down for 5 minutes. We had them back up and running shortly after that. Comcast obviously had to do some work there. That's the only outage that we had this year. And so all those customers are just experiencing maximum uptime. The costs, we go through ROI, and I'll actually show you, we have a case study that we did for a new customer, a net new customer, the investment where you have to invest all that into the hardware. So your capital that goes into buying hardware, licensing, the maintenance that goes with that. We've actually been able to, looking at that analysis, it's 14% lower for them to go to the cloud than it is to do it on premise. And so when you think of the resources to deploy all that hardware, to deploy the software, do the installation, all that work, 3M takes that on, and we're automating that in the cloud thanks to AWS. With all the managed services we have from AWS, we're able to go in and automate all that, and same thing with our updates. We're automating more every day, and so that is the power of what we get from the cloud. That's what allows our customers to get their users using the system and not have IT focused on service delivery. So the idea is to get out of the service delivery, focus your IT team on really where your business outcomes are and what those strategic initiatives are, because with our customers, you have valuable resources, and getting them locked into the IT service delivery of a legacy system just isn't beneficial to the customer. So that's why we're doing this in the cloud, is for our customers. And then flexibility. We've had some customers with AWS. We had a customer that was also in AWS. The day after they signed the contract, we actually had our AWS accounts talking to each other. So speed is really big with this. We've installed some of our products in 3 weeks or less. We've got a customer that went live from the time of contract in 41 days. So speed is really critical. When you're on premise, you've got to provision that hardware, you've got to acquire it, provision it, and nowadays it could take 3 or 4 months in some cases to get that hardware in the first place, and we can already be off and running on a project in 2 weeks. So our whole system can be built in 2 weeks. We get connectivity in place, and we can be up and running pretty quickly. So the flexibility of being in the cloud has been huge, and looking at different services we can provide our customers takes that burden off of them to figure those things out, like disaster recovery and some of those pieces as well. So a little bit more on the case study. This is an actual, our first this is actually the very first customer that saw these benefits. So right off the bat, we saw some tremendous benefits to our customers. The uptime we talked about, 14% ROI over doing it themselves on premise, 85% reduction in the IT level of effort. This is on our first customer. So doing things like the first VPN connection with a customer, a live customer, doing the federated authentication with the live customer, those were all some pieces that took a little bit with the very first customer. We've been able to optimize that even more. So we're even more than 85%. So we're probably in the 90 to 93% range now as far as removing that burden from customers as we've standardized more of our work. And for a month, that might sound like a long implementation, but a lot of our implementations for this product will take 6 or 8 or 9 months. And so we're trying to cut that down and cut it in half and be able to go faster. A lot of that delay was that early progress of getting those servers in, getting them built, getting them deployed, and then having 3M come in and do the installation on top of that. So that remote connectivity and everything else has always been a challenge. So we're just able to do a lot faster than what we'd had. This customer came to us. They actually had divested from another hospital system. They were building all new systems. They had over 150 systems they had to deploy. They came to us and said, hey, we need to do this and we have to have it in by April 1st. And they said, can you do that? We said, yeah, it was our first project. Sure, we can do that, right? We had good confidence. We had a lot of work leading up to that, and we hit it. We hit it on April 1. They went live. They were off and running with no issues on day one. So it was a pretty cool project to be involved with. So why did 3M, why are our customers looking at AWS? That complexity of the implementation that we talked about, it's a large integrated system. There's a lot of work that goes into getting all of our artificial intelligence power behind that. Long issue resolution times. Customers get very frustrated when you've got to take 3, 4, 5, 6 hours or sometimes more to resolve an issue that it may be on the 3M side, it may be on the customer side. And then that inconsistent experience. So one customer can be working fine, the customer right down the street might be having a lot of challenges. Well, why is that? There's a lot of things that are introduced into the customer's builds and their environments that we're controlling in our environment now. And then the cloud centricity. So there's a lot of interest in the cloud. There has been for a while in the healthcare industry. And so there's more moving in that direction and looking at cloud-first solutions. And so that fits with our strategy. So when we're talking to customers, we really want to make sure there's a strategic alignment between what your cloud objectives are and where we can fit into that. So we've created a system that can meet our customers where they are on the cloud journey. And then really AWS has been a great partner. So we have our solutions architect, Kyle Bush. Shout out to Kyle. I haven't seen him here, if he's here or not. But he's been fantastic for us to work with, a great consulting side. AWS has tremendous services, but the educational that we get also from them, our teams are just really blossoming and running with AWS. So it's been a great partnership so far, and we only look forward to more partnership with AWS. So how did we do that? Basically, through the whole process, we already had a product, but to actually offer something new in the cloud, 3M has a very robust commercialization process. And so we go through that process. We had to basically build the business case, do all the VOC for that business case, make sure our customers wanted the solution. And then we have to go through, when we get past that stage, then we go into our development stage. So now we start building and deploying. So we had to write all the infrastructures of code that we do, all the lambdas, everything else that we're putting together. The architecture, we have an ATO process to make sure before we can ever put any customer's data into one of our cloud environments, we have to make sure we've cleared our security. And so we basically look at HIPAA, high trust, SOC 2, all of our internal compliance is for that. And so we try to align with that before we ever implement a project in the first place. And so our security, as we mentioned, is job zero at the beginning. That's really what we're passionate about at 3M, is making sure that our customers' data is secure. So going through that process, then we get to a launch, and then an early adopter. We got our marketing plan in place. So once we proved it out, we're ready to run. We did several alphas internally. We find that first customer, and that's always a challenge, right? Is finding that first customer. So you can go through and you can have all of your things in place, your criteria in place, and next thing you know, there's a customer that comes along that has a need and they don't fit into your criteria. And so there's a little bit of a risk there by taking that customer on, but we had good confidence in our solution. and in our people. And that first customer we delivered right off the bat. It wasn't what we considered our ideal customer, but it certainly is what we felt like we were ready for with that. So did we learn some things on the way? I'll share those with you in just a minute. On the operational side, some things that we had to really challenge is our monitoring. So AWS, we found about the CloudWatch synthetics pretty early on. Tremendous tool. We use that now. We use canaries. So every couple of seconds or minutes, we're pinging the application. Are you up? Are you listening? And we can see the timings of that too with the synthetics. So we get a lot of detail from that, and then we alert off of that. If we get a canary that fails, we're on the line and we're in working, and that's where we're trying to resolve the issue before the user even knows there's an issue, is by doing that monitoring. We've developed some of our own. We're advancing our log monitoring as well. And then at the host level, we're doing all the standard monitoring that you have through CloudWatch, regular CloudWatch, we have that as well. We're using Splunk to do log monitoring and various tools like that as well. And then when you're in the cloud, and what we see with customers on legacy is you have a test system and a production system, and change control is a problem. So if you don't have a way to keep those systems in sync, you can get them out of sync real quick. So we've done a lot by having those systems under our control. We can do a lot we've created a proprietary tool to actually compare the configurations between those two systems to ensure that they're actually the same, so we can keep them consistent over time. We do use a follow the sun approach for our maintenance, and so we try to accommodate our customers where they are. So typically for us, that's typically on Wednesdays for production, and it's between 6 and 8 p.m. in that local time zone. But we allow a customer to opt into any time zone if it works better for them. And so we just group them in, and then we run our updates and patches during that time zone for that customer, whichever time zone that they're in. And then the other thing that we've really embraced, and it's part of the well-architected framework when you look at that from AWS, is the idea of run books and playbooks, right? And so it's really critical. Documentation is oftentimes the last thing that we think about doing. We've tried to take the approach that it's the first thing we need to do. So whenever we encounter an issue, we document it, it's a run book, and we publish it, and it's on our support website for our customers to have. We've got DR run books, we've got run books on a particular issue in the cloud, slowness from the customer perspective. So those run books are something that we've really embraced, and that helps us move fast. That's that issue resolution, and it ties into consistency. You go from one customer to the next, you have one EMR that has a unique configuration that you have to overcome. It's a run book. So we do everything in run books, and that's really that power and value of having a team that's focused on that piece as well. So really, what were the challenges along the way? I think this is the big piece, and what people are always looking for is how did that work? What were the challenges? What did you have to overcome? And the first, when you look at security, that's always that piece. We encountered some things where interface engines, for example, the version they were on, maybe it wasn't able to be fully encrypted. And so we had to come up with a solution for that. And we have 3M technology that we use to deploy to ensure that data is ever encrypted before it ever leaves that customer's data center. So again, trying to empower our team to come up with tools or use tools or redeploy tools that will allow the enhanced security fitting in with what our customer security expectations are. User authentication. When you look at an on-premise application, your users typically, we used an LDAP query into the Active Directory, so they log in, okay, are you here? Yes, you're in this user group. So we had to actually create in our application, so our development teams had to do a bit of work in order to support SAML authentication or ADFS. So if we were going to take our early customers, if we were going to try to take their Active Directory and put it in the cloud, do like a read-only Active Directory, it's just a big security nightmare, because now their Active Directory is not on-premise, it's not under their control. And then in order to keep it on-premise, we'd have to do trusts, and trusts are messy to manage. They're big overhead. So getting that step of getting basically the SAML support into our application, we're able to make the application work the same way, but now we're using an authentication service that ties into Imprivata or Okta or any identity provider that's out in the market. The connectivity, so early on we looked at our design, and so when you look at speed and security, we did look at AWS Direct Connect as a potential solution, but we wanted to really keep cost. It's important for us to keep our costs down for customers, and so for us to deliver that at a cost, we felt like that doing a VPN was a better approach. So what 3M is able to do is we deploy a VPN to our customers. We have flexibility with that. They can use their own VPN appliances, we'll supply appliances, we can work with a vendor partner to put in broadband circuits as well if that's needed, but that flexibility is there, so we can meet whatever, again, we can meet our customers where they are, so whether security doesn't allow a vendor appliance in a DMZ, we can not use that, we can use their appliance, we can use their existing circuits, or we can provide a circuit. So there's a lot of flexibility that helps our customers with what they need for that particular solution. And then speed, getting our project through. So I started on this project in June of 2020. We were GA and had this product out to the market in July of the next year. So it was 1 year for us to get through that process, the VOC, everything else. We had a little bit of a head start thanks to AWS early on with some of our development teams. We were doing a little bit of work on some of the architecture, but once we really got in, it was about a year to actually get through that process and move through until we had a generally available product. And then finding that first customer, I mentioned this one, but that's that trick, right? I remember I had some internal development teams saying, well, is this the right customer? They don't meet all the criteria. And I'm like, well, you want to go find another customer for me? This customer has a need right now. And so there was nothing that was anomalous to it. It was interesting because that first customer actually had a multi-cloud approach. They had their EMR was actually in Google Cloud. They had their on-premise Citrix environment without some of their other products, and then we came in with our product in AWS. And so you have this kind of three-way communication, and it works beautifully. It performs very well, and we had a little bit at the very beginning of one outage. Other than that customer has had no downtime, no outages, and so it's been a really good experience for that. So anyway, I just wanted to wrap up, but say, these things are challenging to move to the cloud. It's a big workload to do that. If you're a vendor and you're doing this, there's a lot of great advantages of doing that. Some real challenges that they're really looking at to overcome, that need to be overcome, I think, to give that flexibility. We're looking at trying to, where's that VPN going to be in the future, right? Do we need a VPN? Can we make this publicly accessible? So that's that next step for us. We're looking at that next generation of what we need to deliver to make it even more accessible to our customers. And so with that, I'll leave it there. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for joining me, sitting in. Thank you.